So welcome to our May presentation. Today we're going to be talking about mental health and why it's important. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I thought that was a great opportunity to talk about this very important topic. We hear and see things all the time about other medical issues, but for some reason our mental health still seems to be a bit taboo. We don't talk about it in social settings. I think that in general, older adults sometimes do a better job of talking about it, though. Hard to say why exactly that is, right? But I think sometimes we lose a little bit of that ability to care as much about what people think, and we just ask for what we need and talk about things the way they are. And I think that's so valuable. I think this is a topic where it's super important to really talk about the details and how we can help ourselves to be as functional and as independent as we can. And mental health really can play a big role in that. Okay, so what is mental health? So on a broad level, mental health is our cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well-being. It's all about how people think, feel, and behave. So you can see how that impacts everything, right? The state of someone who is functioning at a satisfactory level of emotional and behavioral adjustment, that would represent good mental health, right? So then what is mental illness? So we can talk about a really wide range of conditions, and what we're talking about is their effect on mood, thinking, and behavior. So the most common types that we see are clinical depression, anxiety disorder, and bipolar disorder. Without having to have any participation here, I'm sure we could all name somebody probably in our immediate family that struggled with one of these conditions, right? They're very common. And there's a lot of things that the medical community suggests that we do for them. But there's also a lot of ways that we can help with them without going kind of that more traditional route of medication. So we're going to talk about all different things related to that today. So the first thing that we need to talk about in relation to our population today, you guys, is understanding cognitive changes versus mental illness, and what things we can expect to kind of be normal as we age in regards to the brain and our cognition. So as we all know, some memory loss is going to kind of come with the aging process, right? We may also see difficulty with some tasks, difficulty with verbal expression. We've all had that time where you just can't find that word, right? Or that name, or whatever it may be. And that is certainly not exclusive to older adults, but as we can recognize, sometimes that does get a little more challenging as we age. Mood and behavior changes. Poor judgment. We often see some safety concerns as we get older and we can't quite do what we could when we were 20, right? Decreased initiative. How many times have we all just felt like we could sit in the chair the rest of the day and not do anything else? Increased risk of vascular diseases. Anxiety, fear of falling, trouble multitasking, and trouble concentrating. Okay, so what tools do we have that can help us counteract mental health issues and illnesses? So the biggest thing that we can do, and one of your handouts has some examples of this, is we want to work on our brain fitness, right? So just as much as we want our body to be fit, which we're going to talk about a couple bullet points later, our brain needs to stay fit too. So one of the handouts you have actually has some exercises on there that you can do on your own later that help with memory recall of certain phrases. Okay, so some of them will be familiar to you, and being able to recall that missing word in that phrase is something that can help you to continue keeping your brain fit. Social activity is another really good one. So we all know it's easy to feel down in the dumps if you're by yourself, but sometimes just that phone call or that visit with a friend can really give you that pick-me-up you needed to get you through your day, right? There are actual documented research studies where we've looked at social interaction and its impact on a person's well-being, on their mental and their physical health. And unfortunately, we've seen a really large-scale example of that in the last couple of years with being more isolated to certain different degrees at different times due to the pandemic. And we've kind of seen a whole different way of social interaction coming out of that. So good in some ways, right? Because a lot of us now use some technologies that we might not have used before, such as, Zoom and Skype, the ability to have a video call with a loved one who might not be close or just might not be able to travel to you. And we've all kind of adapted to some new and different things that help us stay engaged. Physical activity, that one's obviously a no-brainer. You're here watching me, so you knew I had to throw that in there somewhere, right? But truly, we all think so much about, okay, being physically active. We know it's so important. But if we aren't physically active, we're not taking care of our brain in that way either. And then brain nutrition. So not just our overall nutrition, but what things do we need to be eating that are going to feed our brain? Okay, so what does an active brain look like? So if we're looking at this first quote here, it's from the Harvard Medical School, and it says, brain fitness might be used to refer to a general state of healthy, optimized brain function, or a more specific brain-based ability to process certain specific information, enable certain motor actions, or support certain cognitive abilities. Okay, so what does all that say, right? Our brain controls everything, right? Our brain is that central driver that controls all of the things that we do. So obviously, when we think of our brain, the first thing that comes to mind is memory and basic logic processing, problem solving, things like that. But we have to remember that our brain also controls what our body does too. And then if we look at the second quote, it's from Simon Evans, who is a brain health expert. And he says, an active and fit brain, what does it look like? He says, it is a combination of improving the physical and mental health of your brain. This is accomplished through nutrition for the brain, physical exercise to increase brain power, and mental exercise to increase brain connectivity. Because we know that as we continue to do a certain physical motion or think and process in a certain way, we're allowing our brain to reinforce those pathways that allow us to do that thing and get that output, get that same physical motion as an output, get that same type of problem solving or memory recall as an output. And if we don't continue to engage our brain and do those things, it becomes more difficult for our brain to follow that pathway, right? So a good way to think of it is if you have the same path that you follow when you go on a walk, and it's in an area where weeds can grow up a little bit, right? If you walk that path every single day, well, those weeds aren't going to be right in the middle of that path because it's been walked on. But if it's maybe once a month that you go for that same walk, that part of that path is in your walk, those weeds are going to grow up around there, and you're going to have to work a little harder to find that path to go down. Our brain is the same way. If we're not following that same pathway in our brain, it becomes harder for us to do it the next time after there's been a break in the use of that path, okay? So how do we exercise the mind? Exercising the mind to keep it active is as important as maintaining physical fitness and strength in older age. Throughout life, the brain is responsible for keeping us happy, right? Mental health is often a major part of being able to live independently. So we talked about our judgment and making safe decisions as being something that does naturally decline with age, right? Because we lose that ability to do things as well as we did them when we were younger. And if we don't take that extra bit of time, if we don't plan the way to do something, acknowledging the deficits that we have, then we're not going to do it as safely as we could. So if your mental health is good and if you're exercising that brain, you're going to be able to live independently longer by making those better choices to do things safely. Okay, so we're going to talk about some examples of brain exercise. So to ensure that the brain works as best as it can, the mind needs to be challenged every day. Exercising the mind can be fun and easy to do thanks to quick games, tasks, and activities that can be enjoyed anywhere and by everyone. You also shouldn't say, okay, well, I don't like anything on that list, so I can't do that, or that's not something that interests me. There's got to be something, okay? These are ideas and examples, but you have to also customize it to you and do what works for you personally. So some examples: arts and crafts, and that can be anything. Making greeting cards or collages is an example. I had somebody that enjoyed cutting the designs out from cards and putting them on a new card, or making something with that. So you don't necessarily have to be really artsy and really creative to still enjoy doing something with arts and crafts. Coloring, I was just making sure that wasn't somewhere else on my list. Coloring is also a really good example, right? Somebody might not enjoy actually drawing the picture, but they might really enjoy coloring a picture that's already been drawn. Word puzzles. So there are so many different word, and then I see Sudoku is listed on there, number puzzles. There's so many different ways to do that. Both actual, paper copies of a word search or crossword or Sudoku book, or there's ways to do that online as well. And then connection games. These are really good. So looking at the similarities between words to make connections. Those are really, really good for increasing those pathways in the brain. Some people like bingo, some people don't. If you like it, great. If you don't, move on to the next thing on the list. Don't worry. Not everybody likes it, but some people really do. Online games. So like I talked about with the word puzzles, there's ways to do those word puzzles online, or on a computer, on a tablet as well. Puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, physical puzzles. I really like to have that, like a physical book that I'm reading or a physical puzzle that I'm putting together, right? There are times where it's nice to be able to do things on a computer, but there's also times where it's nice to have something physical in front of you. So if you like puzzles, great, that's a great thing to do. They're popular around here, and I love a good puzzle. Trivia, again, some people love it, some people not so much. And it also depends on the topic, right? You have to find a topic that's interesting to you as well. Chess or checkers, any type of game like that, a physical game where it might require a board and pieces. Reading, and then card games. So especially, with chess or checkers or card games, yes, it's great to practice ones that you've played forever and you really like and you know every single rule, but it's also really good for your brain to learn a new game too and see if you can remember the different new rules. Okay, social activity and the brain. Higher levels of social interaction, even peripheral interactions, can have a high payoff. So what do we mean by peripheral interactions, right? That could just mean, you sit down in the lobby and watch people come in and out. Watch people have conversations. Say hi occasionally as people come by. Don't just sit there and stare. That might be a little creepy. But you don't have to, go out of your way to have these big, elaborate conversations and interactions to still get the benefit from that. And I love people watching. Okay, the rate of cognitive decline was 70% less in people with frequent social contact than in those with low social activity. So important. Those with more frequent social activity maintained lower levels of disability in several areas, suggesting that they would be able to live independently longer. Again, the caveat there is every situation is different, right? But in general, people who maintain more social interaction are able to stay independent longer. And no matter who you are or where you are, that's always our goal. Social activity in the brain. Social activity is related to motor function, just like physical exercise is related. Consistent contact with friends can help maintain good emotional health, which means reducing stress and lowering the risk of depression. It can also reduce the risk of dementia. Finding engaging ways to spend time with others allows you to build a support system. Additionally, these relationships provide a sense of purpose to your days. How enjoyable is it when you have someone you interact with and you can ask about their family by name, right? It's always nice to say that because you appreciate hearing about each of those different people in their family and how they're doing. And that person, think about when someone says that to you, that person really appreciates you taking the time to remember that. And even if you can't remember their name, if you say, oh, your granddaughter was going to school, how's she doing, when she graduate? It's so nice to be able to have those connections with other people and hear about what's going on because that's another thing as you age. Your family may still be doing really interesting things, and that's nice to hear about, but you may not be, traveling as much or, doing different things that you would have done that would socially engage you, right? So we can kind of live vicariously through other people as well, and it's important to keep that contact. Okay, so how do we stay socially active? Participate in clubs, any clubs you can find. There's all kinds of things on campus here. There's also all kinds of things in the community. There's also lots of opportunities for that online too. Joining an exercise program or group. Participating in senior center or community events. Participating in faith-based groups. Volunteering in the community. Making new friends. Spending time with loved ones as often as you can, and utilizing different technologies to stay in touch, like we talked about, a way to do a video call where you can see the person and hear them, such as FaceTime, Skype, or Zoom. So we know that exercise improves brain health. Early and midlife exercise enhances cognitive function. Exercise as we age can slow the effects of aging on our brain. Even short bouts of exercise throughout the day can enhance your brain's performance. It also helps to manage stress, reduce depression, enhance your sleep, and reduce your BMI, right? Because if you enjoy eating like I do, you also have to make sure you're doing enough exercise to balance that out, right? So I'm always saying to my residents, the most important thing you can do is be up and moving. And I don't need you to go run marathons, but I do want you to walk a couple times a day if you're able. And increasing that distance you walk each time is a really good way to increase your physical activity. I'm not saying that you need to go for, a real long walk if that's not something you're able to do, or that you need to spend your whole day on your feet or your whole day up and walking. I think the true key is to have short bursts of manageable activity frequently throughout the day. I often tell people, I don't want you to sit for any longer than 30 to 45 minutes at a time. If you're sitting for longer than that and you haven't gotten up, hear my voice in the back of your head telling you to get your bottom out of the chair, okay? Because that's so important for so many reasons, but number one, for activity, but number two, for posture. As we age, our posture suffers a little bit, just naturally, okay? Those muscles don't always want to do what we want them to maintain our good posture. Well, the longer you sit in the same position, the more you start to slouch. That's all of us. I find myself leaning over my computer by the end of the day, and I have to say, oh my goodness, sit up straight, right? So that 30 to 45 minute break of standing up and moving, and even if it's just to stand up, take a couple steps, and then turn around and come back to your chair, it resets your posture and it engages your muscles just enough to give them that input so that we can count that as a little short bout of activity. So how does exercise affect your body? What is good for your heart is good for your head. As we often say, everything is connected, right? So exercise facilitates the development of new blood vessels to the brain. Through that exact process, it oxygenates the brain. It also reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease that might increase risks of type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and stroke. Something else we can talk about is the physical and cognitive link that we can use when we do what's called dual task training. So if you're doing something physical and you try to do something cognitive at the same time, like a lot of times people say, oh, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, right? It's meant as a joke, but some of us do either not have the ability or we do kind of lose the ability to be able to do two things at once. In reality, we should be able to do two reasonable things at once, right? So if you are, very steady with your balance and you're walking, then you should be able to walk and think about something a little bit complex at the same time, or walk and count, or something like that, where we're using our brain and our body doing two different things at the same time. I caution you with this because your number one thing is that you have to maintain your safety first before you think about any of the details of this, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples and some details here. So we want to combine tasks, and that can increase the challenge and the use of your executive functions of the brain, right? What we mean by that is the brain being the controlling force for everything that goes on in the body, right? It's got to plan how to manage this cognitive task we're doing and then the motion of the body at the same time. There's consistent evidence that both physical and cognitive training have the potential to maintain cognitive efficiency in aging, and that combining them in successive or simultaneous ways amplifies their efficacy. So we can also talk about this in terms of, okay, I have you walk to the other end of the room, and then I have you, count or recite the names of your grandchildren, or whatever it is, something that makes you really think. And then I have you walk back, and then I have you think about something different, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be at the same time if that's not a safe thing to do. So some examples: category naming. Name me some cars, name me some colors, name me some weather terms. And doing that while walking would be dual task. Telling a story while you're exercising. So if any of you have seen me for therapy, we do this all the time. Whether we consider it part of our therapy in a really, in sense of me actually documenting it, is that, well, sometimes we're just telling a story while we're exercising, but it's still helping the brain. Conversing during ADL tasks. So your ADL tasks are your activities of daily living. So getting dressed, eating, without talking with our mouth full. I'm working on that with my daughter right now. But being able to use that time where you're already doing a task that you have to do anyway and talking while you're doing it. And then visual discrimination, like I Spy, or doing a puzzle during a balanced task or during a walk. Again, something like that, there have to be parameters to make sure it's safe. I wouldn't want you looking at a book or a puzzle or something while you were walking, okay? No. But we could play I Spy, like I spy, something blue as you're walking and it's in your vision. That's safe to do and could be a really good example of our dual task training. So how do we eat for a healthy brain, right? We know some basic ideas for nutrition of how we can eat healthy, but what specifically impacts the brain? So eating a brain-boosting diet can support both short and long-term brain function. The brain is an energy-intensive organ using around 20% of the body's calories. The brain needs plenty of good fuel to maintain concentration throughout the day. The brain also requires certain nutrients to stay healthy. There's a list, and it's colorful over here, that has some examples of certain types of foods that have ingredients in them that are known to be very beneficial for the brain. So I'll list those real quick. Salmon, berries, avocados, coffee, walnuts, Greek yogurt, and broccoli. There's a longer list than that. That's kind of a topic for another conversation. This is just, giving you some basic insight into this. So when we talk about brain nutrition, what are those main factors that we need to look at? We want to decrease our risk for obesity, meaning we're doing several things here. We're putting the right things in and the right portion size of those things, and then we're also counteracting those calories that we've taken in with physical activity in the same or greater amount so that we're not taking in more calories than we're using. We want to decrease our risk for diabetes because there are links between diabetes and the next one down, which is going to be our cardiovascular disease risk, but then also the next one down, high blood pressure and cholesterol. All of those things are related, and they all really impact our brain. Because our brain controls everything, we see those effects at the level of the brain kind of first. And we see that decline in cognitive output in whatever way it displays because of some of those medical conditions that can happen. And then there's a couple here that that talk about specific ingredients or specific types of ingredients in certain foods that can help with brain nutrition. So we want things that decrease free radicals and increase antioxidants. That goes hand in hand. And then we want to increase the unsaturated fatty acids and, again, decrease the saturated ones. And we want to look for things that increase our mental health. Okay, so May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So aging is a fact of life, and it is important for us to focus on healthy aging, including behavioral health or mental health. May is also Older Americans Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. We need to bring awareness to mental health in older adults all throughout the year, not just in May, but this was a good time for me to choose this topic. And a mind that is challenged through brain fitness, stimulated socially, boosted through physical activity, and nourished with good nutrition is a healthy mind. So no matter what we're doing, we need to be looking at that whole picture. And while I mostly function in the role of providing that support for physical activity here on campus, we already talked about some ways that I help with your mental health awareness too, and also improving that mental functioning, mental and cognitive functioning that helps to keep you aware of what's going on with your brain and how it affects your whole system. So if anybody has any additional questions about this topic, I would love to talk to you about it, either you folks that are here or anybody watching on the broadcast. This one's important, guys. This one's the one to pay attention to. If you don't listen to anything else I ever say, this one's the really important one, because you only get one brain and it controls everything that you do. So we need to constantly be working to improve its function and to keep ourselves safe and independent. Thank you so much for joining me. And I haven't picked next month's topic yet, so I'm open to suggestions. All right. Thank you.